Don't make the biggest mistake in the history of hiking, and the mistake that most people do to begin with, including me for a very long time. I'm not joking here, this is serious. The biggest mistake that you can do is not to hike at all, because of all of the mistakes that you potentially can do during a hike. Don't let that stop you. Today we will go through the most common mistakes when hiking, divided into 2 different categories, and in the end also give you 5 additional mistakes all hikers have made as a bonus, and how to fix them before your next hike. So stay tuned for a very, very exciting episode. We all do mistakes when new to something and when learning a new hobby or activity, and hiking is of course no different. Even if I consider myself being somewhat experienced in a way, I still do a lot of mistakes, more often than I would like to admit. Today we have 2 different categories to cover, and in the end also 5 big mistakes that you can easily fix before your next hike. Here is category number 1. Not all people use tents. Some prefer a hammock or a tarp, but for most people the tent is the go-to solution when it comes to shelters, and there are a lot of mistakes that we can do when it comes to tents. But I can't cover them all during one episode, so here are 2 common mistakes that I see on the trail. Number 1 is using the tent without all of the guy lines attached. And if they do, they're not bringing enough pegs to use them anyways. This is, in my opinion, a bad choice. The weather can change rather quickly, and especially in the mountains. And the guy lines and the pegs are the one holding up and supporting your tent and your tent poles if using a freestanding tent. If not all of them are used and the weather gets ugly, well then your tent will not live up to its full potential and you risk damage in your tent or worse. And then you probably need to abort your hike and look for a shelter and head home the following morning. Not very fun or safe if you would be in a situation to be far away from any shelter, town or your car. See to it to attach guy lines to all of the guide points and bring enough pegs to use them. The tents are designed to withstand a certain amount of wind, but if the guide point isn't used, well then,
trouble.
Number 2 is using the pegs in the wrong angle and not fully pushed into the ground. It is very common to see like 50% of the peg showing, and this is not very good and it will not perform very well. And it doesn't take much force for them to get pulled out of the ground. This is really bad if the wind picks up, so see to it that you push the pegs into the ground in a 45-degree angle and all the way down to the spot where the guy line sits, just like this. Now you will have the maximum support for the pegs used. For me to have a lot of support for bad weather, I use a mix of 80 cm and 20 cm tube stakes from Big Sky. But the MSR ground dogs are also a really good alternative, and many swear by them being the greatest. But I don't know. The test that I performed shows that the length is the most important factor, not the shape. But no matter which one of these that you choose, you will end up with a good peg if you use them correctly. You can also, as a safety measure, and if there's a risk of higher winds, put some rocks on top of the pegs, making them more secured if you're still worried that you haven't done enough. The second category to cover today, and before I give you that list of the 5 additional mistakes, the sleep system. A lot of things can go wrong when buying a new sleep system, especially when new to hiking and that you don't know what you need and maybe don't know if you're a warm or a cold sleeper. The first big mistake a lot of people do is buying a narrow sleeping pad, or what you call a regular pad. Sometimes just to save a bit of weight, but no, that is not a good idea in my opinion, not even if you prioritize weight before comfort. If lying on your back on a regular pad, your elbows will then end up on the ground and you will not have a comfortable sleep and your elbows will be cold. Instead, choose a wide and long pad like 60 cm or wider and about the same length as you are or slightly longer. I am 180 cm long and I use the Tensor Alpine long wide at 64 cm wide and 193 cm long, and on this pad I sleep like a king in comfort. Most pads comes in different sizes, so be sure to pick one right for your length. And if weight is of importance to you, the Thermarest Uberlight, X-Lite or X-Therm is the way to go. The second big mistake when it comes to the sleep system is buying a pad and a sleeping bag or a quilt with not enough warmth, and then because of that get cold during the night. And this is probably and mainly because of lack of experience, and there are a couple of important factors that you need to know before buying a pad or a sleeping bag. The pad protects you from the cold coming from the ground, not the air. so the air temperature is not the entire truth. And this is especially true when it comes to springtime, when the ground can be frozen and the air temperature can be like 15 degrees or more. Because of that, and because I'm a cold sleeper, I use a pad with an R value of 4.9 for 3-season hiking, and I find that to be okay down below freezing, but also during summertime. What the best choice is for you is, for me, difficult to say, but the 3.5 in R value that many recommend for 3-season pads is not good enough unless you're a warm sleeper. So I recommend you choosing a pad with an R value of 4 or above if you're also planning on hiking when it is close to freezing. Regarding the choice of sleeping bag or quilt, you also need to mind the moisture content. If your bag gets a little bit damp during a hike, it will lose a little bit of warmth. So choose a bag that has a 2 to 3 or even 4 higher comfort rating than the temperature expected, or bring some sort of insulating layers like a down jacket or down pants to use if the temperature drops a little bit more than expected, or if your bag gets a little bit moist. The third and final big mistake when it comes to the sleep system is not bringing a pillow. Yep, I believe that to be a big mistake. A stuff sack filled with clothes is not as comfortable as a pillow, not even if it is an inflatable pillow. I can nothing but recommend the Dream Sleeper pillow from Big Sky at only 44 grams. Totally worth every gram. Now when we have covered the 2 topics for today, let's dive into the 5 mistakes all hikers have made, including me, and how to fix them. Buying the backpack first is a big mistake. Instead, buy the ones that takes up the most space in your backpack, like the tent, the sleep system and the cook kit, and then buy a new backpack to fit all of your gear. Don't use a lot of stuff sacks, like one for this and one for that. No. Instead, use a liner inside your pack to put all of your gear into, and then maybe just a few to keep yourself organized, like a food pod, a data bag, and electronics bag. Hiking in new shoes is a big mistake. Figure out what shoes you want, try them out and break them in before your hike. The wrong pair of shoes can really destroy your feet and your hike. Carrying a lot of water is a big mistake. Instead, use a water filter so that you don't need to carry more water than necessary. Caterham Be-Free is my personal favorite, but a lot of good brands are available, like the Sawyer or Hydro Blue. Just pick one. Not to carry an SOS device like the Garmin InReach or similar is or could be a really big mistake and could literally cost your life. And me, embarrassing to say, I don't own one yet. Don't know the reason why, but probably due to the cost. But I will buy one later this year. That's a promise. That was today's hiking mistakes from my point of view, but the question is now, what mistakes have you made on your hikes that you would like to share to the rest of us? Please tell us all about it by leaving a comment. This is it, and thanks so much for watching, and if you liked today's episode, take a look at these 2 recommendations on other videos. Also do hit like, subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss out on any future content. I hope to see you again next week, but for now, take care, safe hiking and bye bye.